And I think that they are starting to get tied up a little bit in the monster they've created and holding on to things, because we have new Jeffrey Epstein news. We have never made an episode about Jeffrey Epstein. We talked about that a little bit in one of our flashbacks, that this is something a lot of people were paying more attention to than we were. And so for those of you who have not been in the details, I wanted to do just like a quick review of the Jeffrey Epstein situation so we know what we're talking about. Jeffrey Epstein was a math and physics teacher who was so charismatic that a parent at the Dalton school where he was teaching recruited him to Bear Stearns, and his financial career was off. Partner at Bear Stearns, in like 4 years, he created his own firm. Almost instantly is managing over $1 billion in assets, and he built lots of houses and hosted lots of parties and flew famous people around the world in his private jet. And in 2005, the parents of a 14-year-old girl told Florida police that he had been molesting their daughter in his home. And the police went into his home and found photos of young girls everywhere. I was reading a quote this morning from one of those officers who said, "This isn't he said, she said. This is like 50 she's said and he said." He ended up making a deal with a prosecutor. The federal prosecutor on this case was Alexander Acosta, who was Trump's Secretary of Labor in his first administration from 2017 to 2019. And Acosta makes a deal with Epstein where he gets an 18-month prison sentence. He gets released to work in his office 12 hours a day, 6 days a week during that sentence. And he ended up being released on probation after 13 months. He kept all of his property and all of his assets.
Ugh.
In 2022, it came out that Prince Andrew had paid millions of dollars to settle a lawsuit with a woman who said that connected to Epstein, she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew when she was 17 years old. That woman died by suicide in April. Epstein was arrested again in 2019 in July. So New York prosecutors were reportedly seeking the forfeiture of his home in New York, where these types of crimes had been occurring. At his last court appearance, which was July 31st of 2019, it became clear that there wasn't going to be a trial until the next summer, and that he was going to be in prison awaiting that trial for about a year. He died in his prison cell on August 10th, and the reports were that he died by suicide. The next year, in July 2020, his former girlfriend and longtime friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was arrested. A year later, a New York jury convicted her of sex trafficking minors, and she is in prison. She has a 20-year sentence. And around all of this, for years, there has been this whole almost industry of people saying there's more to this. There are high-profile people swept up in this. There's a client list, and people like FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino have been part of the chorus of people saying there should be mass arrests and prosecutions of all the people who are involved in this. So then they get the power to look into this, and everybody's waiting. Okay, the truth is really going to come out. In February, the Department of Justice released what it called the first phase of Epstein files. That was extremely disappointing to all the people who've been waiting. It included some materials obtained through searches of property, but really nothing else. But don't worry, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General says, I have got the files on my desk. President Trump has instructed me to just blow this thing open, and I'm going to do it. Well, on Sunday night, we learned that no, they're not.
Well, the Sunday night was not an accident because they didn't have what people wanted to hear, which is there is no incriminating client list, which does not surprise me. Jeffrey Epstein was not a pimp. He was just a partier. Right? Like, I don't know why he would have a client list. They weren't his clients. They were just his high-profile friends and influencers he liked to surround himself with. There is no credible evidence that he blackmailed prominent individuals as a part of his actions. Again, he was rich. What would he be blackmailing them for, is my question. Also, they did not uncover any evidence that he died any other way but by suicide, which this is probably why you and I never did an episode on this. None of this is surprising to me. This is what I thought had happened. Now they are confirming this is, in fact, what happened.
That he was a predator, and a lot of high-profile people probably knew it. And that's awful. And that's it.
Yeah. And I mean, some of them participated. Prince Andrew did the settlement. Virginia Jeffrey, the woman he settled with, died by suicide this year in April. There's plenty of heartbreak here, plenty of crimes. It doesn't have to be a mass conspiracy. The mass conspiracy is that for years, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the only one who sexualized and slept with young girls. I just watched a Instagram from this account called Excess of the 80s or 80s Excess or something. I mean, Bill Wyman, the bassist for the Rolling Stones in 1984, started sleeping with a 14-year-old, married her at like 19, divorced her at 21. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew that this dude of the Stones slept with like 13 and 14-year-old girls. This was like, it was not a conspiracy. It was a reality everyone understood to be true, especially in high-profile environments, right? Fame is a predatory environment. And so it's like, it's like we had this weird hard turn where we did wake up and finally decide, hey, we shouldn't just sort of blindly accept super old guys sleeping with super young girls. I mean, celebrity culture is rife with this. Hell, Beyonce was 19 and Jay-Z was 31. Would you let your 19-year-old sleep with a 31-year-old? I wouldn't. So I just think like it's like the conspiracy theory caught our refusal to accept that everybody accepted this for a really, really, really long time.
And it's gross and awful. And there very well may be people who have a range of culpability who have not been held to account for it. I don't know. All I can know is what's in indictments and reports. I understand why people remain obsessed with this because he did groom young girls and pay them to recruit other young girls to be around him. It's a horrifying story. It's awful. And the wake of tragedy just ripples out and out and out. And it's hard to like comprehend how much pain was inflicted by this person who people like our sitting president said was just a terrific guy and so much fun to be with. And in 2002, Donald Trump said to New York Magazine, it's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. The open secret of this is galling. And like you said, pervasive. And there could be more to it. Senator Ron Wyden has been investigating payments that flowed to Epstein from a billionaire investor, and he says that he thinks there is substantial evidence that prominent people have a lot to hide about Jeffrey Epstein. So there could be more to this. I have no idea. I just know that a healthy politics cannot coexist with a true crime obsession in terms of who we think ought to run the government. And I think that's what Kash Patel is figuring out. Like, you don't get to make the turn from wildly speculating on social media about who has done what to having actual responsibility for who gets prosecuted in a court of law with evidence that will hold up. They're different things. And I'm really sad that so many people have been swept up in conflating them.
There's something interesting here with regards to the fact that this entire timeline, maybe not his actual crimes, but the timeline since his suicide took place in such a intensely online environment. It's interesting to contrast it with like JFK's assassination, many of the files of which that have also been released under Pam Bondi's leadership, including some that are showing like that some of the things people thought were true all along were that the CIA did have a relationship with Oswald, and was sort of grooming some people around the Cuban Revolution. And also it's like it's not proving that the CIA assassinated JFK, like releasing all those files. It wasn't some bombshell. It was what my understanding had always been to be true, which is some people made the call that were like, this stuff will just fire people up. It doesn't actually lead to anything. It's just going to fire people up. I mean, that seems to be the call they made with the JFK files, right? Like, there's no conspiracy, but there's enough here that people think there will be. So we're going to shut it down. We're just going to keep it secret, which also led to its own sort of conspiracy fertile environment. But it's interesting because the what I would describe as a quick burn, particularly in relationship to something like JFK, around Epstein, it's almost like it burned so hot and so fast it had to burn out. Like, sure, there will be people who will believe till the day they die there's some, like, super secret client list. But it is interesting to watch the way it grew and grew and grew, swept up people in power. Those people on the at least partly on the energy of that burn, got themselves into a position of power and are now saying, "It's the end, there's nothing here." Is sort of a fascinating contrast to the timeline around something like JFK or Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. Like, I just to me, what has been true is always been true. That when people can't make sense of a very complicated informational environment, they create conspiracy theories. And it's hard to think, well, the CIA was involved with Oswald, but doesn't mean they ordered a hit on JFK. Or Jeffrey Epstein groomed these girls. It doesn't mean that it was a global conspiracy of elites. It's just awful. It's awful to accept that people knew about this and let it happen. And that also doesn't mean that there's this vast conspiracy. It's just the way people want to make sense of the world. I think it's always going to be, to a certain subset of the population, a conspiracy theory offers the salve that they're looking for.
And honestly, I struggle with even talking about the Epstein stuff as conspiracy theories because it's not that old, because there's still just a lot we don't know. There are just a lot of unknowns. And some people have theories about what those unknowns could be, how they would fill in the blanks. And some people just have questions. It's weird that the Department of Justice has released this video of hours outside of Jeffrey Epstein's cell that is still missing a minute. And they don't have an explanation of why. And it's weird. And people are going to tell stories and fill in blanks because we're people and we have imaginations, and that's the kind of thing that we do. There's just a lot about this that I kind of have to sit back from and say, I don't know, but I can't make trying to find out my whole personality because I don't have the resources to do this. And, I just have to go with the officials. And sometimes officials let us down. I think this deal that Alex Acosta made was terrible. I think it was a terrible deal. So, there are just pieces here where you have to say there have been some government failures around this too. I think that because players who are central to the MAGA movement have staked such a claim around this and have speculated with such intensity about what does exist and what should be done about it, that it is going to be a real problem for them. I don't think that a lot of their supporters are going to say, well, I guess there's parts of this that we'll just never understand, because they have incrementally trained people to not accept that explanation. And I think that will hurt them in the long run.